architecture, we have seen what is the purpose. So it's a detailed, uh, you can say, set of documents where business architecture, uh, where business architecture is defined. And here you are having a brief or the detailed information about the business entities. So you need to know who are the business stakeholders, which we get that information from phase A itself. But in phase A, we are having very high level of business architecture information and the detailed in phase B. Here we have also seen that how we can uh, get that information. So there are different steps which are basically included in the phase phase B, right? So we need to select the reference model, develop the baseline architecture, target business architecture, right? We need to perform the gap analysis. We need to define the candidate roadmap components. We need to resolve the impacts across the architecture landscape, right? On all the domains. We need to conduct a formal uh, stakeholder review. We need to finalize the architecture and we need to update the architecture definition document for business architecture point of view. So these are some key inputs which we have discussed. We get that information from architecture information vision and business principle goals and drivers, organizational model and strategies, existing architecture descriptions and models, and architecture repository artifacts. Right? So these are the output which we are expecting from this business architecture phase. That baseline architecture and the target architecture should be uh, clearly mentioned that what we are going to achieve after this completion of this ADM. Gap analysis results, what are the things which, so that matrix which we have discussed, we can create a matrix. And in that matrix, we can mention that what are the things uh, which are already there in the existing and what are the what are not in the target architecture. And you can also exclude the things, right? Why it is missing, whether it is intentional or unintentional, deliberately, why, whether it is required or not, right? So those information you put it into the into uh, in the form of gap analysis, right? So but you need to identify those and business architecture roadmap components, and then you you need to update the architecture definition document and architecture requirement specification update, business requirement refined from the analysis, right? So so you need to follow a structured and iterative approach, emphasizes stakeholder involvement and validation. So because it is related to the business entities, right? So you need to in touch with the stakeholder. Any approval, any validation which you want, you can get it from the stakeholder point of view. Okay, and this will be the input for our C and D uh, phases of ADM. So we were talking about that gap analysis also. In the gap analysis, mainly you are identifying the gaps which is in baseline and the target architecture. Okay, so you create the matrix. In that gap matrix, what you are having baseline architecture building block and the target building block. So it is up to you that how you want to represent in the form of matrix. One should be horizontally defined, other should be in the vertical. So it's a matrix form. For example, if we take this one, so this is the gap matrix where baseline and target. So B is indicating here baseline and T indicates target. So in the baseline customer management, it is included in the target also. In target, we are having order processing, which is also included in the base line architecture. In target, we are having online payment, but it is not included in the baseline architecture. Billing is included. Eliminated, nothing is eliminated. New, the online payment for the target architecture, right? So these kind of metrics we can create, and we can identify what are the gaps between the baseline and the target architecture. Now we will also see that what will be the approach, right? So approach means um, what is the role of uh, phase B into the entire ADM. Okay, so let us try to understand that one. Right. So let us do one thing. So whenever we are talking about the phase B, and we have talked about the business domains before EDM cycle discussion, and we mentioned BDAT, which is the business data application and technology, right? So now we are discussing about the business architecture, right? So this is, you can say, first architecture activity in the BDAT sequence. So it is the foundation for your rest of the subsequent architecture development, right? So it is very critical because you need to justify the business value, right? You need to you need to tell to the how the data architecture will work, application will work, target architecture, right? So this is basically the input for all these C and D. Okay, C and D is basically the combination of these two. Okay, data and application is in C, and technology architecture is in D, right? So it is very critical. Okay, so in the as we are basically talking about that uh, business architecture, so whatever the architecture roadmap you have defined or architecture vision we have defined, we need to make sure that it describes the target or future state of business, which is aligned with this architecture vision, right? So this is the main objective. Other objective which we have discussed, we need to find the gap, identify the gap with the gap analysis, right? You need to understand the difference between baseline and the future business states, right? Then um, you need to take it as a guide for your data application and technology architecture. So guide for data application and technology architecture development. Okay, you need to prove whatever you have understood in the business architecture, right? So it is a uh, it is the information or the business architecture which you have defined, whether it is gap or future. So uh, it should be approved one. Okay, so you need to take the appropriate approval from the stakeholders. Okay, so right now let us discuss about the some common scenarios, right? for the business architecture point of view. So first case is that existing business architecture, right? So now in this case, what you are mainly focusing on, you are focusing on that gap between the whatever is required, right? So in the baseline architecture, you need to first identify the existing models. You need to verify that one. You need to validate that one, right? Existing model, you need to verify, and then you need to, so this will be your action. This is your action as a business architect, right? And you need to focus on what? You need to focus on the bridging the gap between the uh, whatever the stakeholder concerns. Okay. And the main output of this, once you do this, so the output is that you are having a refined and aligned business model with the our business model, right? Which is for the architecture development point of view, right? Now, next is that so this will be your approach. This is my approach. Okay, so you will take the existing business model, verify it, validate it, and then the you need to validate it by taking the approval from the stakeholders, then refine and align with the uh, business model with the architectural development. So that will be the outcome. Now, uh, when we are talking about this approach, right? When we are talking about the something which we call the stakeholder buy-in. So you need to gain that. Okay, so stakeholder buy-in means stakeholder should be agreed on that, right? So whatever the business processes you are having, you need to understand the business architecture, business objectives, right? So your stakeholder should buy in, and so how your stakeholder will buy in, this will be your action. Your action is that you need to understand the business objective. You need to identify the core business processes. Okay. And you need to gain the stakeholder buy-in. But how you will get that? So what will be your approach? So approach is you need to interview the stakeholders. Okay. Interview stakeholders. Then you need to review the business strategy documents. Okay. And you need to map the capabilities, business capabilities, and value streams. So those those are the things which you need to uh, you need to take the action. So this will be your action. You need to identify the business core processes, its key objective, gain the stakeholder buy-in. What will be your approach? You need to talk to the or interview the stakeholders, review the business strategy documents, and you need to map the capability with the business value stream. All right. Now, which few things which we have already discussed, but let me repeat that one also. So, what are the key inputs and resources? So, key inputs will be the uh, your vision, architecture vision, which is phase A, because that is a starting point for identifying the business goals and concerns. Then we are having the architecture repository, which is having the industry level reference model, enterprise specific assets, standards, architecture building blocks. So those things are the key input for your business architecture, right? So here I was talking about the mapping the capability with the value stream. Okay. So business capability. So business capability is, or you can say capability map, business capability map. So basically it shows that what the business does, and it helps to identify the strategic focus area. Okay, capability map is nothing but what the business does, and it helps to identify strategic focus areas. Then we are having value stream or value stream mapping. So this is basically it maps that how the value flow through the organization from the stakeholder point of view. Then we are having the organization map. So in organization map, basically business units, their relationship, and then we are having the um, that process or process model, business process model. So it describes the business processes. So this is basically your, you can say, deliverable from the business architecture point of view. Now, when we talk about the modeling, whenever you are using certain diagrams, so you use some tools like UML diagrams, right? There is Archimate for high level integrated views. So, so that is what we are doing in phase B. Do you have any question related to the phase B? I want to, okay. So do you have any question first?
Well, I'm slow.
Okay. So now let me ask some questions if you understood this. I want to know that I want to know that who will be the participants in the business architecture. Okay, I want to know that who will be the key participants in the business architecture. What do you think?
Well, definitely, somebody, some leader, some senior leadership from technology.
Very good.
Also, I can also think like, maybe also some senior stakeholders from the business standpoint.
Very good. Okay, good, good.
And I don't know, maybe, the other enterprise architects.
Yeah, enterprise architect is definitely required because you need to align the business architecture with uh, the architecture vision, whatever we have defined architecture roadmap. So enterprise architect is definitely required because whatever is going into the this ADM, so always enterprise architect involvement is required. So yes, you are very much correct that the key participant is the, I'll say, executive leadership. Okay, because it is related to the business. So executive leadership means CEO, managing director, chief operating officer, chief financial officer, CIO, CTO, right? Because their role is to define the business vision and strategies. They need to approve the major business architecture changes. They need to ensure that alignment with the organization or company goals. So these are required. And definitely we need the business architect, right? Because business architect is the one who is basically main actor for this phase. So he will design the business architecture framework, capability maps, value streams, and the business models. He will align the business strategies with the processes and technologies. So business architecture is the one who is basically doing all this work in phase B. Now there will be business unit managers. Right. So business unit managers means like marketing manager, sales manager, operation manager. So they manages specific department of the business unit, right? They provide the requirement and operational insights. They ensure that architecture supports their daily operations. So business unit managers are also required. As you mentioned, we need to have the IT and technology teams, IT architects, and the technology teams. So ultimately, the business architecture is to be translated into the technology solution. So, so they need to design the IT systems and the infrastructure, and they need to make sure that system supports the business capability. Right. Then I would say, um, right. So I would say that process owner and analyst should also be the part of that process owner and analyst. So they are basically the one who are telling you that uh, how we can improve the business processes or what are the current business processes. They are the one those who are talking about the document workflow, performance metrics. They need to identify the efficiency and the automation, right? So they are the one who are the process owners and the analysts. Um, Maybe you need to contact to the some external customer or external stakeholders. So what are those? Now, say an example, you are having suppliers, you are having partners, you are having customers, right? So they provide the requirements uh, which can influence, uh, which can basically impact their uh, means. For example, some third party stakeholders, your client, okay, client's client, right? Those or the end users group. So they are getting impacted with this process change. You need to know how they are getting impacted. So they provide the requirements and their feedback, and it will helpful for your business strategies and services. So these are the key participants into the business architecture. All right. So now we have done preliminary, we have done architecture vision, and this is the business architecture. Now let us move to the next phase, which is the phase C, information system and systems architecture. Right. So now, so far we are having the architecture vision, we are having a business strategies defined by the business architect. Now you need to support that. See, there is nothing technical happened so far. There is no technology, no how the data could be stored. That maybe you have high level document, but actually the where the data is getting stored in database tables, schema, what is the data engineering process, right? So those are not practically happening so far. So now this particular phase, which is our phase C. So here we are talking about the two domains, which is the data domain and the application domain. Okay. So for this, the for B, the output of phase A, okay, output of phase A becomes the input for phase B, and output of phase B becomes the input for C and D. Okay, so it means whatever you are doing in data point of view or application point of view, so there are different uh, uh, architect teams, which is the application uh, architect team or architect, and there are database or data architects, right? So ultimately, now we need to start working on the data for the future or the target state. So you need to support the business. First of all, whatever you are going to define, it should support the business architecture. Whatever you have defined in the business architecture, it should be supporting that, and it should support the or it should be aligned with the with architecture vision also, right? Which is in defined in phase A. Now, next one is that you need to, whenever you are defining this architecture, right? So you need to make sure whatever the stakeholder concerns and the statement of architecture work, right? whatever the stakeholder concerns and statement of architecture work, it is to be addressed, right? And another purpose of this phase C is that you need to achieve the business goals, achieve the business goals, okay, through your information system. So, so as I mentioned, this particular phase, phase C, is divided into two parts. One is related to data architecture, and second is application architecture. So in application architecture, you you are basically defining the application system. Uh, for example, you are having a CRM application, which is the customer relation management, right? You are having some other application, how they can communicate to each other, how they are aligned to the business functions, right? So all those things are in the application architecture. Whereas in the data architecture, so you are defining the data assets, you are defining the data assets and data management resources. Okay. So overall, what we are talking about, that phase C is of two parts, data and application architecture, and it should be aligned with the architecture vision, business architecture, stakeholder concerns, statement of architecture work, business goals, and application is more focused on the application point of view, what type of applications will be developed and what will be the communication plan between them. Data architecture is more related to uh, the data schema which you are creating. Right. Now let us see uh, what are the main objectives. Okay, main objective of this phase C. So now uh, so the main objective is that you need to develop a target information system by using data and application. You need to so what we need to do, we need to develop a target information system architecture for data and application. Okay, so you need to tell that how this information system is will be enabled a business process and strategies, how it is basically fulfill or align with the stakeholder needs and architecture requirement. You need to describe the services, system, data flow, which is which is to support the business architecture. So that target information system architecture you need to develop. Now, next one is that you need to identify the candidate architecture roadmap components, right? So candidate architecture roadmap components. What does it mean? You need to identify or you need to analyze the gap between the baseline and the target architecture. So gap, identify the gap between baseline and target or future state. You need to know what are the transition architecture steps. You need to define uh, you need to define the work packages. Work packages is nothing but the solution which we are talking about, right? So work packages are nothing but the solution which we are talking about. Those packages, for example, executable files, for example, some scripts, right? So which is just like a solution, right? So define, you need to define the work packages. Your project, okay? and uh, and something the building blocks, solution building blocks, which are included in the architecture roadmap, okay, which will be used in further our phase E. Right. Now, if I talk about what are the key inputs for this, so if you see that these are the, means you need to develop the target information system, and you need to define what are the architecture component architecture roadmap, candidate architecture roadmap components. Okay. For that, you need to see the gap, transition steps. You need to provide the work packages, define the work packages and solutions, architecture building blocks, etc. Now, let us talk about what are the inputs. Okay. So, what are the inputs for this phase C? From where it will get the input? So, it will get the input from uh, statement of architecture work, right? Because that is something which we need to do in the architecture point of view, right? By knowing the baseline and target architecture, target business architecture, which is from B, then architecture vision, then architecture principles, which are defined in preliminary phase, architecture principles, policies, and constraints. No? Then we need to have the input from the some references. You can say architecture repository assets. So this will be the input for phase C, right? So it will get the information from all these different documents, or from where mostly these are the documents only, right? Or you just talk to the business architect team. You need to talk to the enterprise architect team, how I can get that information, where it is documented, right? So repository access you need, right? Now, once you are having these input, what will be the output? Okay. So for the output means we are getting this information. Now we need to define the data schema, database schema. We need to create the applications. What type of applications we need to uh, we need to develop. All these things will be the all these things will be the output, right? So if we talk about the output of this particular phase, so key output is that you need to create a data architecture. So you need to have the data architecture for the target system, data and application both, right? You will be having the gap analysis. You will have the data architecture and the application architecture uh, model. Okay. You are having the, once you make that changes, you need to update the ADM document, right? So architecture definition, ADD document, architecture definition document, where you need to update that one. So that will be the output of this phase. Then means maybe something which requires the architecture requirement specification to be updated. So architecture requirement specification, right? Specification. So that updated information you will have, right? And the candidate architecture, candidate architecture roadmap component. So it will be updated, means you will expect these kind of output from this particular phase C and D. So, so ultimately, when we are talking about this phase C, so here, let's take one example. So, or uh, yeah, so let us talk about the data architecture models. So here, what we are doing, we are basically uh, when we are talking about the data architecture model, we need to identify the database tables, database flow diagram, database. Okay, so that is the modeling. So in here, we are identifying the data entities, data flow diagram, how the data will be uh, input, how the data will be, you know, load, how the data will be transformed, right? We need to have the data lifecycle diagrams. We need to have the data migration diagrams. And we are having data security model. All right. So these are this is the example of data architecture modeling. Now, if we talk about the application architecture modeling, so here you are basically um, here when we talk about the application related thing, like we need to have the application, say, portfolio, application portfolio, catalog, right? We are having interface catalog, application communication diagrams, how one application is related to another application through application communication diagrams, application use case diagram, right? So what are the use cases? For example, CRM for customer, right? And some other application which is related to what business need. Then we are having application interaction matrix. Who will, uh, for example, if some application related to sale, okay, not related to, you can say it is not related to some other department of the business. So those things we will have. Okay. So these are the uh, right. So these are the application architecture model example. Do you have any question?
Well, nothing at the moment. Are we also going to discuss this, data architecture models in detail? For example, the data flow diagram, the life cycle migration, and security model.
Oh, that is not actually. See, if you want, I can share, but in TOGAF point of view, we are not going to discuss that because that is mainly done by the data architect team, right? So they are basically defining the database diagram. So that comes under the different means here it is in brief. And when if you want to go to the detailed part, so that is related to the database related courses. For example, if you are having data engineering course, right? So in data engineering, we discuss in detail or something which is the related to database tools like MySQL or DBA related activities. So there we discuss. Here it is just a information that data architecture model will have data flow diagrams and the detailed part is not covered. Uh,
Okay.
so you want that detail also, is it?
Uh, no, I don't want the detail, but maybe I can take it as an inspiration. Okay, because anyway, I'm not going to work in data architecture in detail, but maybe it can be a little bit helpful in what the flow data diagram looks like, or maybe how the security model looks like exactly. So, I mean,
Okay.
if you have something, some reference,
All
uh,
right. All right.
yeah.
For enterprise architect point of view, right, these things are very high level overview we have, right? For example, if something we need a database diagram, for example, you are saying we will have communication plan diagram, but the, you know, this flow diagram, we use some tools for that, right? By using those tools like Visio diagrams, UML diagrams. So there we just define that how our schema looks like and how our data will flow. So what I'll do, maybe tomorrow I will discuss little bit about that. So um, you want the data flow, data life cycle, and what else? Data security model. So I will go through these three uh, three types of diagrams. Okay, I will just add that into my notes also, so you can refer that. Okay. All right. Any other question?
Well, no. You also mentioned, this will be mainly worked by the data architects and application architects. So,
Right.
so, so what will be the role for the enterprise architects?
Yeah. So here, so for example, you got a project where you need to convert the on-prem environment to cloud-based environment, the example which I am taking from the beginning, right? So you as an enterprise architect, you need to, you need, you can say you are the owner of this entire project, right? Now, in the preliminary phase and the phase A, especially phase A, you have created a roadmap, right? Which is a very high level roadmap. And you are saying, okay, on premises, we are having MySQL database. And on the AWS environment, we are having the RDS, relational database system, which is MySQL again. Okay. So in this case, this MySQL as it will be migrated to the AWS. But your business, and you have also defined certain, because when you are defining in architecture vision, right? So you are defining very high level components of entire project. Now your business architect is basically identified some gaps, and he is saying, okay, there are some tables missing. There may be some stored procedures are missing, some functions are missing, which we need to add it into our target or future architecture. So now that business architect person, so he's basically talking to the enterprise architect, because whatever the business needs or goals are there, that should be aligned with the architecture diagram or the document which enterprise architect has mentioned. Now, enterprise architect has mentioned that on premises we are having MySQL tables which is to be migrated to the AWS. Now, who will do actual work? So this is business. So phase A, then business architect, and then the database architect who will come into the picture. He will say, I will do this work. So now what work I need to do? He will ask what work I need to do. So who will tell that this? So here the enterprise architect comes into the picture. Enterprise architect will say, okay, we need to migrate our MySQL database or the database which is in the baseline architecture. So that is to be migrated into the target. So every phase enterprise architect role is essential, because he is the one who is basically making sure that whatever is going into the project, it should be aligned with the architecture roadmap. Otherwise, what will happen? This, see, consider you are a database architect, and I will say, okay, we are having one requirement that we need to migrate some banking data, which is on their data centers, that is to be migrated to the cloud-based system. Now, your question will be, where is that data? Means banking data means how I can access those servers, right? Who will provide? Enterprise architect will say, business architects, stakeholders, right? All those are interlinked to each other. So now you need that information. Your question will go to the business architect or the enterprise architect. You will ask those questions. Where is that server? How I can get the access? Now I need the further detail. So there will be in the baseline architecture, there will be a database architect who is already working on the baseline or on premises servers. So that will be the person. So enterprise architect has created a roadmap that there is a baseline data architect who will provide the database related information. He does not know much about the data, means how the database tables, enterprise architect, but he has designed that whatever is in the database in the existing table, that should be converted as it is into the target architecture, means in AWS. Plus, business architect has reported in the architecture definition document that business architect point of view, there are some gaps. So those gaps are also to be filled. Okay, so it means all are working together only, whether it is business architect, whether it is enterprise architect. So main honor you can say for entire project is enterprise architect team only.
Clear.
Okay, so we cannot see, means whenever you are working in on your project, right, ultimately there will be some head of that, means for example you are working on say an example, on which technology you are working as a solution architect, right, mainly
Well, no, yeah, you can say solution, but I mainly cover the cyber security.
cyber security, right? Now when you receive cyber security project information, you have contacted someone, has given this work to you, right? So there will be a, for example, this is for client one, right? But client is not directly talking to you. Client is having some middleman in the sense you can say client send it to your company and your company has given this work to your enterprise architect, and enterprise architect requested to maybe the solution architect and to you, right? So there will be a complete flow, and you, if you need some information, what kind of testing I need to do, or what kind of request we need to prevent, right? So what are the tools which are allowed, which are not allowed, what kind of security model uh, we need to apply. So all those questions will be answered by, from where you get the requirement. And if that person is having those answers, he will give you the answer. Otherwise, he will ask to the its enterprise team. Means, for example, your information you are getting it from the business person or business architect, and that business architect has all that information. If he does not have, or if he sees there is a gap, then he can modify the architecture document. He can inform to the enterprise architect team that there is a modification is required in the architecture roadmap. So, so that is how it works. All right. So all the means whatever the roles we are discussing here, business architect, data architect. Now further, when it goes to the technology architect, right? Again, technology is basically defined in phase A itself. Enterprise architect has defined that we will move to the AWS, Azure, right? And technology, now that technology, what tools we are going to use, what programming languages, right? Or how the deployment will work, what is the approach uh, for the infrastructure point of view. So those things, or your cyber security point of view, right? What kind of uh, penetration testing, how you will do, how the you know this how the web servers logs to be analyzed. We need to use Splunk. We need to use, say an example, Dynatrace. We need to use how to raise the incidents. So those things will be, again, it is defined on the top level, but when it comes to these phases, like especially B, C, D, right? So that is the implementation or the detailed way to discuss about that. Like enterprise architect is saying that it is a data migration, but how that will happen, what are the technical challenges, So those things are in the respective phases. Good. Now, next one is that if we talk about the iterative means if we talk about these approaches, so for example, you have developed a web application or some application, and you have created a part of the application. Then you have next part of the application. So when we are talking about the development process, so it is incrementally or iteratively. So if you think something which is to be leveraged from the existing architecture artifacts or industry reference models or architecture building blocks, okay, from the repository, you can do that also. So so the main purpose is that we need to develop the application architecture and the data architecture as per the business capability, business processes, value streams. Okay. So tomorrow we will discuss the artifacts, right? What are the artifacts and how in phase C uh, we define those artifacts, right? We will be discussing about the approach, what will be your approach in phase C. And as you mentioned that you want to know about the data flow diagrams, how it will look like, data security models and data diagrams. So that also I will cover. And on Thursday, I will not be available. So Thursday, we will take a 1 day break. Okay. Tomorrow, I will be there. Yeah. Tomorrow, I will be there. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So I think for today, let's wind up here and we will meet tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. Talk to you
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.